Last month, I worked with Northstar for my college work placement, along with my classmates Lauren and Tommy. Northstar is a project to provide support for families and individuals who care for someone who may be suffering from substance misuse. We worked remotely and met the team at their weekly staff Zoom meetings, where we discussed our projects. Our client didn't really know what to do with us, so we drafted a brief as we went along, which I found to be a bit stressful because I felt that I didn't have a solid goal and that there weren't enough restrictions to guide me. But our team of art students got our heads together and managed to come up with a good enough plan of attack. My tasks were, firstly, to act as a bridge between us and the Northstar team, to provide ongoing progress reports, and to request opinions and approval to any design choices. I also made a brand kit, which is basically a folder with color palettes and high-resolution versions of their logo and different graphics that they can use for their social media, as well as a animated Easter graphic for their Facebook. And lastly, I ran an origami workshop at one of their weekly meetups and made a quick little instructional video to accompany that, as some of the ladies wanted to teach their kids how to do the origami too. That was my favorite assignment. The guests were very friendly and polite, and it was very refreshing to meet new people, even if it was through a screen. If I could change anything about this experience, I would have liked to do a better job at communicating with my teammates. Once we had a brief more or less established, we went our separate ways and did our own thing, which resulted in not a lot of cohesion within our holiday graphics. They look quite different from each other, which has its charm. They're all good, aesthetically pleasing illustrations, and they're beautifully animated, but I feel they wouldn't look very professional standing side by side in a company social media profile. I think when working for a client, you must not forget that the artwork you're making is for the client. We all have our individual preferences and styles as artists, but we shouldn't forget how the end product will be consumed and how their aesthetic will impact the client's particular audience. I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned this past month, and I realized the other day that it was something that Alan had been drilling into our skulls since our first drawing class, bless that man, which is to work from the general to the particular. This is a seemingly simple, age-old painting advice, but boy is it difficult to remember in practice. I think it might be because I'm still too puerile and I'm very lacking in experience, but I seem to often get myself caught in individual tasks and forget about the main goal, the underlying foundation of the project. And most of that happens because of this need to perfectly finish one task before moving on to the next one. And I struggle a lot to change plans and to cut corners until the very, very last minute when things have escalated into a crisis, which a few years ago would have been fine because I could stay up late and push through any discomfort, but now, as my health has declined and my window of productivity has narrowed, I think some changes are in order. I often find myself wishing I could animate as confidently as I can paint landscapes. Not that my landscapes are outstanding in any way, but because the process I go through is a lot more intuitive and fluid and more pleasant. In 4 months, I will hopefully become a fourth-year student. This means that new, more complex challenges and the big final year project are so close now, which is very exciting but also very scary. I am sure it will be difficult, and there are too many variables for me to take into account to predict and prevent any uncomfortable situations. But I'm hoping to try and work through it the way that I paint landscapes, like this one, which began months ago in a sloppy sketchbook full of compositions that will never see the light of day, that became color studies, then a preliminary sketch was made and destroyed, some ugly watercolors were slapped on top, then gouache was carefully tiled in, and when I couldn't fix it anymore with gouache, I embellished whatever was left with pastels and pencils to produce a painting that isn't great, but it's not completely unsatisfactory. A painting that, although not innovative in any way, still taught me many things. I really must learn not to take myself too seriously. There are many things that can be learned from producing less than ideal work, especially because I'm lacking in so many areas. Plans and processes can and must be changed and adapted to suit the current circumstances, but the general foundation must be kept in mind. As soon as the specific details are given too much effort and the general foundation is forgotten, that is when things go astray and a difficulty grows into a crisis. In order to maintain flexibility, one must know what routes are available, and this knowledge can only be harnessed through mileage. It would be very wise of me to make lots of little ugly experiments during the summer months, in order to acquaint myself with as many avenues in this exciting medium of animation, and to hopefully become confident enough to produce successfully mediocre work.